Welcome to another exciting edition of Fourth and Just Us, where we look at the intersection of race, sports, and politics. And we are excited that you have decided to join us today. I'm Leonard Moore, your host, along with Kevin A.D. Anderson. What's up, Kev?
It's all good.
All right. And Luke Feds Fetlam.
What's up, Doc?
Hey, a lot to get into today, and we will jump right to it. The coaching carousel in college football. Earlier last week, it was revealed that Deion Sanders had interviewed for the head coaching position at TCU in Fort Worth, Texas. Initial report said the interview went well. Kevin, what do you think some of the pros and cons are if TCU were to move ahead with hiring Deion Sanders?
Well, I think it'd be a very good thing for them from a recruiting aspect. I think that, if he had the right staff with him, I think that he could do pretty well in Texas or anywhere he wants to go. I mean, this is all about branding. And, if you wanted to get more highlights of your program and you wanted to focus on that, I mean, Dion would be a good person to get that national attention.
Luke, how do you sell Dion to donors and boosters at TCU?
Put him in a room. Let him go. I mean, that's how you sell it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Dion has established a brand for himself that sells itself, right? So put him in the room. They know that it'll help with recruiting, which is going to be big. It'll help with fundraising, which will be big. So from that perspective, I mean, there's not much that you have to do in terms of selling him. Now you have to keep in mind you're going to get Dion, right? Dion is going to Dion. He's going to do what he does and be ready for it. But at the same time, what he's going to do, just like Kevin said, he's going to bring attention to the program that's going to help the program.
In Jackson State, 9-1 right now. We lead the SWAC West. We play Alcorn State this Saturday at the Veterans Memorial Stadium. It'll be 60,000 fans there for that game. But Kevin, let me ask you this: since Dion has sort of crowned himself the standard bearer or the savior of black college football, I mean, will people take Dion seriously if he just ups and leaves Jackson State after basically essentially a year?
I think the way people look at this is that he came there, he's done well at Jackson State, and we live in a society now that, it's all about what's next in line for you, and that I think most people would accept and say, wow, this helped him elevate his brand and his personality and being a coach to another level. So I don't think there would be too much backlash.
Luke, what do you think? Would there be backlash? Would he be called a sellout? What would happen if he were to up and leave and go to a Power 5 school this year?
Well, I think, is there going to be backlash? Of course, right? There's always going to be backlash. People, oftentimes get hurt when somebody, especially kind of, brings a lot of attention to a program and then ups and leaves for a better opportunity for themselves. But I think the question really becomes, what has he done, right? He's really put Jackson State on the map from the perspective of their football program. Is he going to be leaving the program a better place than when he found it? Has he helped set it up for the future, helping them with recruiting, et cetera, and showing that, even for other former athletes, right, who want to get into coaching, he's kind of shown that they can do that. So, are there going to be people that are going to be upset about it? Of course, but that's sports. I mean, that happens all the time. That's why, fans, right, fans are fanatical, right? So at the end of the day, yes, there'll be people upset, but I think that he's going to be putting the program in a better position than when he found it. And I think that'll be good for the program long term.
Thank you. Sticking with college football and this sort of the coaching carousel, Kim Durant, the University of Washington athletic director, a few days ago announced that she was dismissing Jimmy Lake, the head coach, Jimmy Lake, African-American coach at the University of Washington. Kevin, he didn't even complete 2 seasons. And, many of us saw the incident where Coach Lake said he was breaking up a fight between 2 players. But it appears as if he hit the kid in the helmet with a play card and maybe grabbed his face mask. Kevin, was the firing justifiable in your opinion?
Doc, I don't think it was just what happened on the field. The last thing that we saw, there was allegations of him doing and being physical with other players. And so I think that's what brought all this to a head, and that's why he's no longer employed. Although it is kind of strange that if he did all this, they didn't fire him for cause. So there has been some kind of settlement. He's getting paid maybe in the realm of $9 million. So, there's something there that's more to it. And I think that they were just ready to move on. And I think that they were getting pressure that, he didn't have success for 2.5 years. But I mean, nobody gets a chance to do anything anymore.
Right.
If you look at it, Mike Krzyzewski wouldn't have had a job. I mean, they gave him 4 or 5 years, but nobody has that patience anymore. If you don't win right away, you're looking for another job.
It's amazing how, if Washington was 8-2, I bet you they would maybe give him a reprimand, but he would still have his job. So Kevin, tell us basically what goes on behind the scenes from an AD's chair when you have a situation with a coach not winning, you're locked into a long-term contract, and then you have this incident that pops up. Does the athletic department look at and say, hey, this incident may be our way out?
Oh, absolutely. And it depends on the program, and it depends on, where you are. And particularly many of these schools, the regents and the trustees and the donors are heavily involved. And, it's all about the Benjamins. So, if somebody doesn't like, or you have a group of people that don't like, and they're the people that control the purse strings, you bet that you're going to be looking for another job. You're going to be in the unemployment line. I mean, that's just the way it is now.
Luke, you're someone, who champions, you champion the fact that both of you are that black coaches should get opportunities. When you heard about Jimmy Lake and these allegations that this wasn't the first time something like this has happened, does it cause you to rethink, what we are advocating for? Because it seems to me that on several occasions, these black coaches have disappointed us. And do you expect more from an African-American coach? And if you do expect more, is that fair?
Okay, that's a whole lot that you just asked me. So I'm gonna try to wrap all that into one and say, listen, at the end of the day, first of all, we want to see black coaches do well, right? We want to see opportunity. We want to see them succeed. We want to see them win. Looking at what Dion has done, as we were just talking about, right? We want to cheer those coaches on and see them do well. But at the end of the day, we also want to make sure that our coaches are doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? And allegations are allegations and just that. But at the same time, if these are serious allegations, if you're being too physical with players, et cetera, what do we talk about, right? We talk about, coaching in terms of development, right? Preparing, these athletes for success in life, et cetera. And you've got to be able to be that example for athletes. But I do want to say one thing, and I think this is important because, Kevin, talked about, potentially if you're not winning right away, you might find yourself in the unemployment line. But let's look at this, right? Because we're talking about Coach Lake, very well settlement in the millions of dollar range. What is it? Justin Fuente, head coach at Virginia Tech. He just got, fired and he's going to be getting a buyout of about $9 million, $8.5, $9 million. I mean, these coaches, man, these contracts that they're getting into to be able to protect them on the back end it's just unbelievable, right? I mean, and we talked about donors and their involvement and everything like that, but these checks getting cut, it's just almost like, hey, go in there, do whatever you want. If it doesn't work out, oh, well, you're going to get a fat check on the back end.
Right. No, I mean, you're right. And it's just so unfortunate that, and I wonder if because African-American coaches, men and women, don't feel like they'll get many opportunities, particularly at that level, is the pressure on them that much greater? And may they become a little bit more emotional than they would have to be if you've gotten a much long-term deal, or if you're white and know that you'll get multiple opportunities. Speaking of coaches under fire, the university that employs me, the University of Texas, the football program, not doing well. 4-6. Steve Sarkisian, former head coach at Washington and USC, was hired last January. And quite frankly, many of the members of Longhorn Nation thought the team should be doing a whole lot better than this. Kevin, do you think Steve Sarkisian should be under fire for his performance?
Well, first of all, let's go back to what you were saying earlier. They paid Coach Herman and his staff $24 million to leave. Then they bring Stark in, and now he's making, and his staff are doing about $34 million. So when you're looking at that kind of money and the expectations are great, particularly at the University of Texas, you got to produce right away. Here's the problem I have, is now that they've gone public, and particularly since they've lost to Kansas, because, the University of Texas does not lose to Kansas in football. Right. No way. But, now they're throwing the kids under the bus. They're saying that it's the kids' faults, that they don't have enough backups and everything else. Leonard, you live there. Let me ask you a question. last year wasn't the recruiting class number 3 in the country, something like that, close to it?
Yeah, and they went 7-3 last year, and they didn't play Kansas, so they would have beat them. And it was one team that got canceled because of COVID. So, so there's a lot of frustration here. But let me say this. I mean, I think this is a very patient fan base. I think what muddies the water in Austin, Texas, that you got some very, very, very vocal donors. But I think the majority of fans here are okay with 8-4, Luke. They're okay with 9-3. And the argument I've been trying to make, the University of Texas has gotten so competitive academically. I think last year they had like 55,000 applications for like 8,000 seats in the freshman class. And what I've been trying to tell people is that this is not a football factor anymore. If we are honest with ourselves in Austin, Texas, we are much closer to UCLA and Berkeley in terms of athletics. That is who we are, but they don't want to admit it. And so, Luke, let me ask you this question. If you look at the last few national champions, Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, go back, Florida, things of that nature, I've been making an argument, Luke, that all of those schools academically are on the same level. Large state institutions, semi-competitive, but not overly hard to get in. And so you got fans from like USC, Notre Dame, Texas, Michigan. And my argument is those 4 schools will never be able to win a national championship because the culture of the institution is no longer about football. It's about academics. What are your thoughts,
But, Doc, you
Luke?
can't tell those folks that. Michigan thinks that they're going to beat Ohio State and they're going to be in a playoff. And the other thing is that Texas does think that it's pretty good in football and they're competitive because they're going to the SEC. And that's far different than the Big 12. So they made a statement when they made that move that, they're looking at a great football program so they can compete in that league. So, I can't buy what you're saying.
We are a school of nerds. We are a school of nerds. That's what we are. That's what I tell everybody. And I tell fans, folks who win here in the 70s, 80s, 90s, I tell them this, Luke, if you applied to get into UT right now, you wouldn't get in. And they look at me like I'm crazy. Luke, what are your thoughts on that, man? Do you think Michigan, Texas, and SC can be competitive nationally moving forward?
Yes, they can be competitive nationally. I mean, listen, I'm first of all disappointed that you didn't bring in the football powerhouse that is Wake Forest University and talk about our academic standards for all that we're doing in this football, space this year, man. Come on. But
You're
yes,
right.
absolutely, they can compete. I mean, at the end of the day, recruiting, drives things. The right coaching staff, obviously, academics, are becoming more and more challenging at different institutions. You take that into consideration, but that doesn't mean that they can't compete for national championships. I disagree.
We'll
Doc,
see.
Are
you telling me that if you have a 5-star player in Texas, that they won't get him in school?
I'm not talking about they can get them in school, but the culture of the university is not built. For instance, when I was at LSU, dude, the library was closed on days that they had home football games, and sometimes it closed early on Fridays of home football weekends. So the point is, at places like LSU and Auburn and Alabama and Georgia, the whole ecosystem of the university is built around the football program. At Austin, Texas, it is not built around that. It is built on a bunch of nerds. It's built on high tech. It's built on IT. It is not built on. So maybe I'm making a simplistic argument, but I just think USC, Michigan, Texas, 9-3, make a run maybe once a decade and be good with going to a good New Year's Day bowl. All right. Switching gears, the college football playoff rankings were released last night, and not much change. Georgia 1, Alabama 2. Oregon 3, The Ohio State University 4, and the Cincinnati Bearcats are at number 5. Kevin, does Cincinnati have a shot to make it in?
Well, these next 2 weeks will tell you if they are or not. They've got to run the table. There's no question about that. Ohio State has to lose. I think Alabama might have to lose, and Oregon might have to lose. And I'm still saying they're not guaranteed in getting in. So, this whole thing is because, Michigan plays Ohio State that last game. If both those teams win this weekend, then, they're playing for the championship. And if Michigan wins, Michigan's in, I believe. So, it's going to be tough for them. and somebody's, I mean, you're going to have a lot of people lose for them to get in. And, Notre Dame is lurking back there, and Michigan is ahead of Michigan State, and they won. And what's to say that Notre Dame wouldn't jump Cincinnati?
But didn't Cincinnati beat Notre Dame, Luke? And Luke, since you're a Wake Forest alum, you should be pulling for Cincinnati. But you hate no Cincinnati over there.
Michigan State beat Michigan, and Michigan is ahead of them in the rankings.
Yeah, that don't make sense to me. Luke, what's your take on the playoff? Can Cincinnati make it in?
Listen, let the record reflect, right? I mean, we didn't. I think it has to be said. I'm not hating on Cincinnati. I think this is great, right? This is great for Cincinnati, for their fans, and for non-Power 5 schools, etc. I think it's fantastic, but they're not getting in. I mean, they're just not. I think Kevin's right. A lot of things have to happen. A lot of teams have to lose, because the question is, and here's where there's art and science, and we talked about that last week, right? It's this art and science, this combination of figuring out who the top 4 teams are, right? But when you think about it, it's like, is a 2-loss Alabama team, are they worse than a Cincinnati team that goes undefeated? Now, we could say, well, okay, hey, listen, when you lose is important. So if Alabama loses in its SEC championship game, yes, absolutely, they're out. They're not in the top 4. I think we're all on board with that. But they come back and win. If Alabama wins, I don't see any way that Cincinnati gets in.
Okay, Luke, let me give you this scenario. Let's say Georgia beats Alabama ACC championship game. Georgia's in. All right, they beat Alabama. That's 1. Oregon wins out, which is I think the odds are on Oregon winning out. That's 2 teams.
Yep.
Ohio State has Michigan State in Michigan in the next 2 weeks, favored by 17 points or 19 points over Michigan State this week. Will be favored in Ann Arbor. The Big Ten championship game, Minnesota, Wisconsin, piece of cake. Okay? So Ohio State went out, Oregon went out, Georgia went out. Those are your 3 teams right there. And then you got pretty much Cincinnati sitting undefeated because Alabama will have 2 losses. So in what world does Cincinnati not get in if Georgia beats Alabama? Go ahead.
If this was fair, then you would just look at the record and they'd be in. Georgia, Cincinnati, but they have a system where they put it together that, it's objective and that they could do whatever they want to do. And, you have different people in that room. Some are looking at statistics. Some are looking at, knowing what football's all about. I mean, you've got all kind of different people, but it wasn't set up for these other 5 leagues to get into the playoff.
Well, we'll see. I'm cheering for Cincinnati to get in because I think there's a lot of parity in college football, and I don't think the gap between some of those Power 5 schools and the group of 5 schools is as big as people want to think it is to be. All right?
That's right. And I got to say with that too, right? I mean, thinking about the right we could have a potential second Big Ten team that potentially makes it in. If Wake Forest smashes up on Clemson, runs the tables in the ACC, yeah, sorry, we're not getting in. But nevertheless, at least we could toy with the idea for a little bit this season. I will say we've got some great football coming up over the next few weeks. It's going to be fun to see.
Right. And I just want to remind our viewers that the college football playoff is kind of a separate entity. The NCAA really doesn't have a lot of control over that. Speaking of the NCAA, they have responded to the press conference called by Oklahoma State men's basketball coach Mike Boynton, the press conference where he was bringing receipts and taking names, and he was calling people out. And he specifically called out Stan Wilcox, who's an executive vice president for the NCAA. In their response, they basically said that Mike Boynton's press conference has basically caused NCAA officials to basically, be getting threatening letters and harassing phone calls, emails, and things of that nature. Kevin, what was your response to how the NCAA decided to, respond to Mike Boynton? What were your initial thoughts?
So it bothers me that they waited a week to respond to what he said. But here's the thing, and we've talked about this before. This is a membership organization, and there should have been dialogue all along that, where things were and how you could move along, so it didn't get to this point where people were upset and frustrated and had a news conference and calling people out. But here's the other thing that I'm looking at is that, and this is just me, but I think Stan should have been reaching out to Mike, or Mike should have been reaching out to Stan, because it goes much further than this. And we should have been taking care of one another.
Yeah.
So, I think we're all wrong in this because, it shouldn't have gotten to this point and you shouldn't have. Now they're adversarials and it shouldn't have
Right.
got to that way. But, sometimes we get these
Mhm.
positions and we
Right.
forget who we really are and how we should be taking care of one
That's right.
another.
That's right. Luke.
Yeah, the professionalism I think is key, right? I mean, there are a lot of things, a lot of ways this could have been handled differently to have maybe similar effect without necessarily making this, a situation that gets, broadcast kind of over the media. But let's also be clear, though, right? When you mentioned, that coach was bringing receipts, the receipts that he was bringing when he was naming names was coming
Yeah.
straight from the report. So it wasn't like he just was, casting dispersions upon leaders in the NCAA at will. He
Uh-huh.
was naming the people who were listed in the report, et cetera. And I think that's kind of important insights for people to understand, right? Because sometimes we think that the NCAA is this kind of I have a whole bunch of different adjectives running through my brain, but it's just this, amorphous group, right, that just sits somewhere and comes out with things. But no, there are people making decisions behind
Right.
it that have an impact directly on institutions and obviously that have an impact on the student athletes. And so I think, sometimes having those moments of reality, let's call a spade a spade, let's deal with something, when it comes up. I think that's good insights for fans and others who follow the business side of sports.
Right.
It's good for people to see.
I think
Here's
Stan
one.
Wilcox.
I'm
Go ahead,
sorry,
Kevin.
but here's one other thing. The word on the street is they think that Mike was acting by himself and he just did this. He was sitting right next to his athletic director. And the
Right.
athletic director, started the dialogue. And the president knew that they were going to say this as well, because I do not think that they were going to get up there and they just came up and said, we're going to do this and we're going to do it on their own. So, if people think that he just did that, they're sadly mistaken.
I think Stan Wilcox would say if he had a private moment, boy, it's tough being the HNIC in Indianapolis. I think he would say it because, Kevin, I agree with your point, is that him and Mike should pick up the phone and talk to each other. You know what I mean? But I just wonder sometime if we have been conditioned and prepared to be in roles like that, where you are the head Negro in charge, and where it needs to be some kind of old school barbershop homeboy hookup type stuff. Luke, does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes great sense. I mean, I think it is a challenge, right? And I think, but I think you're right. Sometimes, the bigger the stage gets, the harder it is to remember, right? Kind of the basic way of handling things and picking up the phone and just having the conversation and expressing your frustration, but not necessarily doing it on the national stage.
And my thing is this: if you never separate yourself from the people, you'll be okay. But I think what happens is that people get defined by titles and their identity gets centered around a title. And I remember a long time ago, somebody said, if your identity is based on something somebody gives you, i.e. a title, what happens to your identity when they take it away? So we'll see what happens with that.
You're right. Sure, you're right, Doc.
Shifting gears to the association, Steph Curry lighting it up again. I'm amazed at the way this brother shoots. Sometimes his shots don't even hit the rim. And I think to him, that is, a good shot is when it doesn't hit the rim at all, just goes straight through the net. They took the Brooklyn Nets to the woodshed last night. Brooklyn did not have Kyrie Irving. So, Luke, are we seeing the resurrection of Steph Curry? Because Klay Thompson ain't even back yet.
Come on, listen, first of all, I like how you threw in there like Kyrie Irving wasn't playing, and as if that was going to be the big deciding factor. Steph Curry is on fire. What do you have? 37 points in 29 minutes.
9 threes.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Like he is absolutely right now, leading the way as it relates to being MVP. They are just absolutely on fire. I think, ultimately, we're going to be talking about the Warriors throughout the season, because again, who do the Warriors have right now, right? Steph is carrying the team on his shoulders. And not only is he carrying them on his shoulders, but he's getting them so far that he can go ahead and sit down for the last quarter and relax a little bit.
Yeah. No, he's Kevin, you're a Bay Area guy, although they left Oakland to move to the more wider confines of San Francisco. But I know you're still a Warriors fan. So are we seeing this reemergence of Steph Curry?
Well, first of all, Steph's 33, so he's doing this at 33 years old. So that's remarkable in itself. But, being from the Bay, and like Luke just said, Clay's not even back yet. And then they have the first-round draft choice from last year who is injured, and he's about to come back. Young man from Memphis. So I
James
think
Wiseman.
that I just think they're going to be more dynamic, and they're 10-2, and they're far ahead of most people right now. And the Lakers, I don't know about the Lakers. The Lakers are looking old, and that LeBron, I don't even know if LeBron could come back and save them. So it's going to be interesting. The other thing, though, is if you look at some of these teams now, Chicago is coming back. They got a good young team. And so there's some other teams that are evolving that haven't been in the picture for a while. And so I think it's going to lead to a very interesting season.
Right. Cleveland is one of those teams that's super young and they're balling. Evan Mobley got hurt the other day. But let me put this in your ear right now. Don't be surprised if LeBron goes back to Cleveland for his final year, because the pieces are in Cleveland. If LeBron went back, the pieces are there for a deep run. So we'll keep that. Let's think about that.
That's Homer speak. That's somebody from Cleveland holding out hope to try to get one more championship. That is not happening. Doc, stop it. Get out of here.
Hey, you know what, Luke? I am a homer, and I remember a few years ago when the Cavs were in the playoffs, the other beat writers couldn't understand how the Cavs reporters would be cheering in the press box. I'm like, that may go against all the journalistic ethos, but you from Cleveland, we gonna do some homer stuff. Kyrie Irving. So what does Durant do? And I throw this out to both of you all. What does Durant do? He went to Brooklyn because his boy Kyrie was there. Last night, no Kyrie Irving. Nobody knows where he's at, when he's coming back. If his view on the vaccine has changed. Luke, what do you do if you're Kevin Durant in this situation?
Go somewhere else and try to find a championship team. Listen, at the end of the day, Kevin Durant has not shown us that he can be the key factor in winning a championship. Yeah. Like, he is not the main guy. So ultimately now, you try to have this big three with Kyrie and Harden. Kyrie clearly does not care about whether or not he plays again. Has absolutely said, like, I'm not doing what I need to do in order to play the game. So if you're KD, you're just like, well, I don't know if we've got the components to be able to actually make a run at winning a championship. So if I'm him, and I'm not him, let's just be very clear. But if I'm, if I'm thinking about what he's thinking, I'm guessing he's probably thinking like, well, where could I go? What else could I do? How can I win another championship? It's not going to happen in Brooklyn if Kyrie's not playing with him.
So it seemed like you said Durant can't win one on his own. So how can you be the best player in the NBA but not have the ability to carry a team to a championship? And Kevin, let me ask you this. Does Durant need to get his own ring for him to be considered one of the greatest of all time?
No, he's already got his rings. And here's the thing. There's 5 people that play out there with you at any one time. It's all about being a team. No one person wins it all. You have to have people that have certain roles that help you win. Now, if I was KD, I put my arms around my teammates and tell them, come on, let's go out and do this. Let's prove these people wrong. He's going to have to provide some more leadership in there. And that, if Kyrie comes back or he doesn't come back, they still have enough people that they could win it if they start balling. But, if they start tripping on everything else, they're going to end up where they are now. So he's got to take some leadership, and he's got to carry the team on his back.
But Kevin, hold on, Kevin. Listen, we know though. I hear what you say. Everybody has a role. Everybody has a team. 5 guys around them. But listen, the Bulls aren't winning in the 90s without Jordan. The Cavaliers, Doc's home team's not winning their championship without LeBron, right? We could go through, the Warriors championships, right, without Steph. Ultimately, they build these teams, they build these roles around the players. And I just don't know that Kevin Durant is that player you build around in terms of role players. I think you have to have other.
But you just said he's the best. You just said he's the best basketball player playing right now. I just heard that.
No. I did not say that he's the best player right now. I
thought I heard that.
Oh, yeah, no. Steph Curry right now is playing the best in the NBA, period.
Hold on, stop for a minute. Stop for a minute. If you were starting a franchise right now, Luke, right now.
Yes.
They say you can take any existing player in the NBA to build your franchise with. You gonna take Steph Curry over Kevin Durant?
Yep, sure am.
Ooh.
Come on, man. Come on, bro.
I sure am. Hey,
Come
done
on,
deal.
bruh.
Tell me what
Come on,
Kevin
bruh.
Durant has done. Tell me
Come
what
on,
Kevin
bruh.
Durant has done on his own other than try to chase
Well,
championships.
hold on. Wasn't he the MVP of one of the championship series? I believe so. Wasn't he?
Okay.
He's got two
Okay.
rings. So he went there, they won, and after he left, they hadn't played. I mean, they were in last place a year ago. So I mean, the
So,
numbers and the
so
facts
both
speak
of
for
y'all,
itself.
brothers, my brothers, just like we talked about how brothers have to communicate. Let's communicate for a second. You're telling me right now that you pick one player that you're building around the entire franchise. You're building a franchise on. It's going to be KD.
Yeah, Steph Curry may be like the 10th person I pick. He ain't even the best guard I would pick, let alone the best overall person that I would build a franchise around.
Well, okay, offline, we're going to talk about your other 9 if you're going to put Steph Curry 10. We'll talk about that offline, but I disagree.
I would take
franchise.
Lillard before Curry.
But let's
I'd
be
take
clear.
Lillard
Let's
before
be
Curry.
clear. As between the two, I'm choosing
Yeah.
Steph Curry. Now, if we're going to talk about in the entire league, obviously Steph Curry's getting older, all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk younger and the future of the league and all that. There's some great young talent in the league. But I do not believe that Kevin Durant is that person that's going to lead a team on his own to a championship. Not happening.
Well, we will see. But if Kyrie get back, it's a wrap. So Kyrie, come on back, man. All right. Women's college basketball. Dawn Staley. This past week, she, took clippings of her national championship net and sent it to all the African American women coaches in college basketball. Created a lot of buzz on social media, and to me, it seems as if she is basically now accepted, and she's running with the baton that John Thompson has passed her. And let me say this, Kevin and Luke, I don't think she is just representative of Black women coaches. I think she has become, in many ways, at the collegiate level, the premier African-American coach. And I think she is settling into that role. What is your response to that, Luke? You think Dawn is owning that role?
I think she is owning that role, and I think she's owning it as a Black coach, period. But even beyond that, she's owning it as a damn good coach just in sports across the board. I want to make sure that we give honor to Carolyn Peck, who kind of started this back in the late 90s, basketball coach at Purdue, who actually sent the clipping. That's where Dawn kind of got it from. And so now Dawn, instead of choosing just one, right, to your point, really took on the mantle of, I want all of us, right, all Black women coaches in college basketball to win, and sent it out to 80 plus, Black head coaches in college basketball. And I think, that is so representative of really kind of the person that she's become in leading kind of as a Black coach and just as a coach in general. Absolutely.
Kevin, you have a personal relationship with Dawn. Do you think this is something, she's always wanted to do, or you think, she just looked around and is like, well, somebody has to step up and lead, and and it's my opportunity to do it?
Well, she's been doing it, but she hasn't been as public as it is now. I mean, I've sat with her on NCAA women's basketball committees, and she's taken the leadership. And Luke, you're absolutely right. It's great for Black women and Black coaches, but it goes beyond that, because she's accepted and everybody holds her to the highest esteem, Black, white, whatever color you are. So, I mean, she's gone far beyond what she's able to do, and she gives back. So, she's reaching back and helping, aspiring coaches that are coaching now. But, and she's very committed to the community. So, on so many fronts, I mean, she's just an outstanding human being, not even talking about a man or a woman, just she's an outstanding human being. And, I'm not surprised at all. And I think that she has the best yet to come. So we'll see. But I mean, she's a tremendous person, and she deserves all the accolades and all the money she's getting paid.
Duke men's basketball, the city on a hill. Image took a little hit a couple of days ago. Mike Krzyzewski's grandson apparently was in a car with one of their star players, and they were one was charged, the driver's charged with DWI, and Mike Krzyzewski's grandson, I think, charged with DWI. The Duke player, I think, charged with aiding and abetting a DWI. This comes out yesterday afternoon. The individual in question on the team, Luke, plays in the game last night. What does this say about Duke's image? Because I think there's historically been a public image that Krzyzewski has tried to put out there that the media has completely, run with. But then there's sort of been this stuff privately behind the scenes, like with the Zion Williamson controversy. Luke, how do you read what's going on at Duke right now, particularly since Krzyzewski is about to stepping down at the end of the year?
Yeah, well, I think it continues to show that these student athletes, these Duke players are just, they're human beings, right? They're human beings who sometimes make some bad decisions and make some mistakes for sure. And I think, there's been this narrative that you've discussed, that Coach K has put forward of almost being kind of above being human, right? That they're above reproach and everything. But these are young men that have made some dumb decisions, to be honest with you. I mean, let's just be clear though, right? Both of them, Paolo Banchero, who's the player, and then Mike Krzyzewski's grandson, both of them are under 21. So that creates an issue, in and of itself, in addition to where we're at. But the idea of, Coach K having Paolo play last night, that's an interesting one. And that's one that I don't know that I necessarily agree with, right? Because I get it that there's, obviously investigation that has to go, through these things. And ultimately, I think he had a quote where he said that it's up to the athletic director, et cetera, in terms of how this is going to be handled. But as a coach, I think you sometimes have to set the standard to say, hey, listen, because you want it to hit for this young man. We all know he's a projected top, potential top pick in next year's NBA draft.
Wow.
You've got to be able to have those moments where you can get through and say, you have got to be smart about the decisions that you make. And we have talked about it at the pro level here over the last few weeks of pro athletes who have made poor decisions. And if you have the moment to be able to drill it home for a player, the importance of the decisions that they make and how decisions they make have consequences and repercussions, right. I think you take the moment to do that and maybe sit the young man for a game, even though there may be future suspension coming. You sit him to be able to help him understand the impact of the decisions being made.
Right. Kevin, your role as athletic director, how would you have handled this situation? Would you have let the young man play?
With all the facts, and if all the facts are the way they are now and how they've been explained, no. But, it's bigger than that. And as you're saying, so I'm sure with this and the national attention that they get, that this goes all the way up to the president. So there were a lot of people probably involved in this, and nobody stepped up and, in a leadership role and said, this is how we're going to handle it. Now, my question is, if it would have been somebody else, it might have been that 10th kid on the bench. Yeah. How would they have handled him? Would it have been different? I think that, we're seeing again where if you're a star on a team, the rules are somewhat different. So I would not have, but, I'm a little different when we go and handle those kind of things anyway. So that's the way it is.
Well, Kevin, you know what Jimmy Johnson said when he became coach of the Cowboys? He said, we got two sets of rules on this team. We got one set of rules for Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith, and Troy Aikman, and the rest of the rules apply to everybody else. Some rules don't apply to them three. So I mean, and that's just real talk. I mean, that's how it is in the academy. That's how it is in the corporate world. So, I think on one level you understand Krzyzewski wanting a star player to compete, but on another level, like you said, there are 18, 19-year-old kids. At what point do you try to set a standard, particularly in a meaningless non-conference game in November? All right.
Last one other question, though.
Go ahead, Kevin.
One other question, Doc. Yeah. So I'm not fully understanding. Was he drinking, or was he just in the car and he should have said you shouldn't be driving? That's the other question. I mean, there's so many things that haven't been answered.
To get an aiding and abetting charge is interesting. And I didn't even know they really had those for DWI. Luke, you're the lawyer over there. Can you give us some clarification on that?
Sure. I had to look it up myself because that's not something that you typically see. And these are, DWIs are always fall under state law. And so, in North Carolina, the state law includes aiding and abetting DWI, which ultimately means that someone basically caused someone else, knowing that they were under the influence, to drive the vehicle. So usually you have to ask yourself, why does that happen, right? And so Kevin's question is completely on point. So was it a situation where Paolo knew, like, I'm a star player and I know that I'm intoxicated, so I want to force this other person to drive so that, nothing happens to me? Because most people, again, don't know that aiding and abetting DWI even exists, right? Or could it be that, hey, I recognize that we're both intoxicated. So, you're the one, you've got a driver, don't drive my car, whatever it might be. The thing we got to hammer home, though, is the fact that there are always resources, right? There are always resources. I talked to a mom of a projected lottery pick, and she called me yesterday morning about this particular incident. Nothing, she's not related to Duke or anything like that. And she talked about how she was like, I don't care if my son called me at 3:00 in the morning, I would chew his butt out for waking me up and everything, but I would make sure that he got a ride so that he could be safely escorted to where he needed to go, right? So helping athletes understand this, that they have options, man, it's so critically important.
That's right. Our last topic for today, we want to talk about critical race theory, the very controversial campaign tool that has been used by Republicans throughout the country, as a way to do a couple things. Number one, as a way to basically take over school boards, as a way to push out administrators that they don't like. And number three, as a way to get out the curriculum and get books out of libraries that they think, quite frankly, make white kids feel guilty. Luke, what is your take on critical race theory and how it has sort of become the new buzzword, or is it just an avatar for everything that aggrieved white Americans come to dislike about the U.S.?
Yeah, hold on, Doc, for a second. Before I give my thoughts, I think it's important for you to share with our audience exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about critical race theory, because here's the issue. The issue is that a lot of people don't understand what it is. So it becomes this synonym for, we shouldn't have to talk about race. So therefore, critical race theory is bad, right? And I think that it's important for the audience to understand, and you're the academic expert here, what exactly are we talking about when we're talking about critical race theory?
So I've been a professor for 24 years. I've taught Black history to over 20,000 students in the past 24 years. I probably taught more students Black history than anybody else in the country over the last period of 25 years. Critical race theory, from what I know, is basically a legal theory that is taught in law schools. And the central argument is basically that race has been a central facet of American life, and it continues to be. So think about this. Black kids being disproportionately suspended K through 12 schools. African Americans having the least access to health care more than any other American. Also, African Americans being stopped by the police more than anybody else. Number four, African Americans experiencing housing discrimination. So we realize that in American life and culture, race continues to impact it. But the way this has been used in many ways by Republicans is what I would argue is that they are tired of being blamed for racism, right? And so what you find is that they throw the term out because they don't want white kids to feel guilty. There is not a single K through 12 institution in America that is teaching critical race theory. Now, my issue is that we have had some, quote, diversity experts at the K through 12 level, these consultants who come in and who are flat out horrible at their jobs. They will make statements like, if you are white, you are automatically racist, so you need to undergo some kind of anti-racist education. And that's the mild stuff they say. So there has been this significant backlash against that. But here is why I'm optimistic. We've been teaching Black history in high schools for the last 40 to 50 years, and there hasn't been a pushback. It is not about making white people feel guilty. It is not about trying to blame white people for systemic discrimination. And so I tell people I don't teach critical race theory. I tell people I teach Black history, which are critical race facts. All right. So thank you, Luke, for allowing me to get that out.
That was, yeah. I mean, I wanted to throw you the softball. I mean, because ultimately you are the academic, kind of on this topic. And I think it's important to understand that when we're talking about this as an academic kind of framework of analysis, right, for us to look at the impact that race and issues of race and racism and institutionalized racism have had previously because of the reality of our history, right, and the impact that it has in our systems and where we're at today. That's so important to understand. And here's the thing, I get it, right? Some people want to, don't want to feel, in particular, white people don't want to feel like I'm being held responsible. I'm being judged for what white people, centuries ago did. But here's the deal. We have to acknowledge the realities and the truth, right? And the truth is that our country was built on a system, right, that used used Africans as slave labor to establish
Free
the
labor.
economic
Free
system that we
labor.
have today.
Free labor. Right.
Right?
But
Free labor.
Luke,
And that has
let me
those
say this.
impacts economically.
But Luke, when we throw out terms like white privilege and systemic racism, institutional racism, here is what white people hear. What they hear is, you're telling me I didn't work hard, and you're telling me the only reason I'm successful is because I oppressed black people. That is what they hear. The only reason I'm successful is because I oppressed black people and the system worked for me and it excluded them. So they really take that to heart because, they believe they really did work hard. But that is what they hear. So a lot of stuff is lost in translation. Kevin, you're the elder statesman on this team. What are your thoughts?
Well, see, they need to look at this as it is, and there is disadvantages and disadvantaged people. So, if the playing level was, if the playing field was level, we wouldn't be having these conversations. But it is what it is. I mean, we've been oppressed since they brought us here. So, they've got to have a reality that, this is not fair. There is this going on. But, we've seen this. Half the country, 50% is divided where, if they had their druthers, they're trying to take the voting rights away from us. They're trying to take everything that, that we were able to establish as we work through it in a legal sense. And now, they don't want us to have it because they saw what happened the other day. They lost Georgia and, they've lost some other areas, and they feel like you're saying, Doc, they feel like, they're losing their hold on what they think is theirs.
So if you saw if you followed the Virginia gubernatorial race, Republican won, and he largely ran on the issue of critical race theory and this idea of, do parents have a say in the education of their kids? Brilliant campaign. And he also distanced himself from former President Trump. So it'll be interesting to see if other Republican candidates will take that campaign template and use it, because we are in for 2022, the racial rhetoric will be on a level never seen before in this country. So just buckle your seatbelts. As we come
Doc,
to a close.
One more thing. I'm sorry.
Yep.
But, in the Jewish community, they say we'll never forget.
Never forget. That's right.
They hold on to that, and, rightfully so. So, when we come up and we talk about these things, nobody wants to hear or have that conversation. What happened was real,
Well, I tell people, as it relates to the Holocaust, we have about 35 Holocaust museums in the United States, right? And we talk about the Holocaust a lot, and we do it because, it didn't happen here. And, we didn't perpetuate that mass genocide. So it is a lot easier for Americans to talk about, the Holocaust as a horror story. But when it comes to enslavement and then Jim Crow and things of that nature, we get off in quiet because, again, the mirror is held up against us. This is what we as Americans did to other Americans.
But this is history, though, Doc. This is history, though. I said this is history. And that's why I got to jump back in, because it's history. When we have, and again, it just happens to be, recently Republicans who are pushing this idea of, quote unquote, taking back our education. That's something that's an issue, because education should be based on history. Right? If we don't acknowledge our history, we are doomed to repeat it and to continue living in it, even in its new forms. And that's why it's so critically important that we actually acknowledge and understand history so that we're not in that situation again in the future.
Absolutely. And just to close this segment out, I remind my white conservative friends all the time, I'm like, you can't have it both ways. Either we going to tell the good and the bad, the ugly of history, or we not. So if your mind, you don't want us to tell the good, the bad, the ugly, take down all the Confederate statues. But you can't have it both ways. You know what I'm saying? We can't pick and choose what we want to put in the American historical canon. As we come to a close, I want to, just remind you, we're here every week, every Wednesday, discussing the latest issues as it relates to race, sport, and politics. Closing thoughts, Luke Fetlam.
Absolutely. So we are headed into Thanksgiving next week, which is exciting. We had a little bit of snowfall here in Columbus, Ohio
Oh
over this
man.
past weekend. Yeah. So we're getting to this place of, times for the holidays and giving thanks. I know we'll be with you all next week, but just got to say, thankful for the opportunity to be able to have these kind of discussions and share insights and learn from you brothers and hopefully share some good thoughts and wisdom with our listeners. Thankful for you guys. Appreciate it.
And the latest term, Luke, from the woke left is not Thanksgiving, but Friendsgiving. Just put that in your back pocket.
Well, I'm going to give thanks, and I'm giving thanks right now.
Kevin.
How could they not give Dusty Baker the Manager of the Year award? I mean, it's criminal. There's no way that he wasn't the Manager of the Year for the American League. It's just a sad commentary, and he deserved it, and it's very disappointing, to say the least. There's other words I like to use, but, we're trying to keep it clean here. So anyway, that's my man, and he's the Manager of the Year in many people's eyes.
Mm-hmm. As fall sports come to a close for the NCAA sports Division I, Division II, and Division III, let's keep in mind that for many of these high-profile athletes, they are about to undergo a serious identity crisis. And this identity crisis doesn't start when they graduate. It starts the minute the buzzer sounds in their last game or last competition. So if there are some athletes in your circle that put your arms around them, because understand this, they've been, very, very good at their craft, I would say, for the last 14, 15 years since they were 8, 9, or 10. And now at 21 or 22, the gig is up. And now they have to, go and compete in the real world where their athletic identity in many ways does not serve them any purpose. So let's keep that in mind. Look forward to seeing you all next week here on 4th and Justus.